Hi, everyone. I'm Tish Conlon. Here's another episode of Tish Talk. Today, I have Donald Lee with me. And to tell you a little bit of Donald, this is going to be a treat. Very interesting guy, very eclectic. Donald is a musician, a teacher. He's been a band director, an economist, a power engineer, marketer, businessman, athlete, public speaker, and most recently an author. He's done a ton of work in the music field. We can hear about that. He's taught choir, musical theater, jazz band, English, math, drama, and other things in school. He's worked in the fertilizer industry. He's run for a provincial leadership role in the political field, and he's been an athlete. Most recently in his 50s, he took up triathlon, competing in local and national events, including the 2013 World Finals as part of the Canadian team, which is fantastic. He's also a spiritual been on a lifelong spiritual quest and has studied everything. It looks like it just a lot from Zen Buddhism to following the Bible, the footsteps of Jesus Christ. And he's brought this spiritual focus to his most recent book called What the Hell's Going On? Aptly called. So welcome, Donald. How are you today? Oh, and you're from Western Canada. From whereabouts are you right now, Donald?
Yeah, Peace River, Alberta.
Oh, amazing. So yeah, well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I know we've been exchanging notes, and let's just dive in. What the Hell's Going On is the book that you felt called to write. So tell us about just about what the hell is going on.
It's yeah, I think you put it perfectly, Tish, when you said I felt called to write. It's not what I wanted to do. It's not the book I wanted to write. The first book I wrote is a book of modern day parables inspired by my experience as a teacher and a band director. It's called The Band Director's Lessons About Life.
Oh, cool.
And it's 50 little parables. It's a little bit like Chicken Soup for the Soul, where each one is about 3 pages long. And it's the kind of thing you can set beside your bed and read one little parable before you go to sleep, to go to sleep with positive thoughts instead of the negative thoughts that you watched on the 10 o'clock news. But
Right.
Anyway, so I had just published that book in December of 2019. And I had toured around Alberta a little bit and did some events and some speaking and sold some books. Well, in the beginning of March 2020, I was just in the midst of planning a cross-Canada book selling and speaking tour when the whole world shut down.
Yes. Yeah.
I was suddenly left with 1,000 copies of my book in my basement that I put on my Visa card, and I couldn't pay the bill off because I couldn't sell the books because you couldn't have a meeting, you couldn't travel, you couldn't.
Right.
And I thought, what the hell's going on? And particularly since, like, a guy I know who's worked his whole life in the financial industry, like, he started telling me, like end of December, early January, he started telling me, like, I don't know, because I was going to stay with him. He lives in the Greater Toronto area, and he's a single guy, and he's got a house. I said, can I come and kind of use your house as a base of operations to kind of tour around the Greater Toronto area and that part of Ontario? And he said, yeah, sure, come stay with me as long as you want. He said, but you know what, that, like, this virus thing coming out of China, this might be a problem for it. I said, what are you talking about?
Right.
And as I learned later, financial people knew way ahead of time that a virus was coming. Like, how could people who are connected to high finance know this?
Well, as we know, it's all about the money. Once you start following the money, a lot of pieces fall into place. So so fast track. Now we're 2022 and lots of intel being dropped. You and I are, I don't like to use the word awake, but aware. You wake up more every day to what's going on out there. But obviously it hit you so much you felt called to write this book, and we're going to dive into this because you bring up a lot of points about the ideology that's behind this totalitarian move, and how we can resist it, why we need to resist it, and ultimately why we all the importance of turning to God, because it is a spiritual war. So tell us about, maybe the framework of So you were like freaked out in 2020, like I know myself, same, coming back from Bahamas and all of a sudden everything's shutting down. It's like, it was kind of crazy. But you know, not everyone is ready to write another book about things. And you know, and you've laid it out beautifully as well. So you know, what inspired you to go through this long process of writing this book on tyranny?
Well, I had actually, when I couldn't do a book tour in 2020, I actually started on writing a memoir.
Mhm.
And I've become really irregular with my blog posts in well, the past year really, but at that time I was very regular. Well, by the kind of beginning of January 2021,
Mhm.
I thought I needed to put some of this stuff into a blog post. So, and I tried to keep my blog short, about 500 words or so that they weren't too long and burdensome. So I started to write a post about, you know, the stuff that's going on. And I got up to like 3,000 words and this is too long. I'm going to have to write a series of blog posts. So, and then I sent this out to the, you know, few readers that I have. And I got some feedback and I realized, they're not getting it. I can't
Mhm.
even fit this into a series of blog posts. I'm going to have to write I'm gonna have to write a book about this, but just a small book, like
Right.
30,000 words or so, like a little booklet. Well, 200,000 words later, I
Wow.
was I was finished the first draft. And
Wow.
you know, from there I've tried to, and that was over a year ago that I finished the
Mhm.
first draft. So the book that will be out in a matter of weeks now, it's with the publisher right now.
Excellent.
It's still a little bit too long, but it's way less than 200,000 words.
Wow. Well,
And this is
congratulations.
the seventh draft. So what I try to do is I try to kind of paint a picture for people so they can see a bigger picture of what the hell is really going on. And I
Mhm.
call it a connect the dots picture. Like
Yes.
the details are not drawn in. It's just like look at this. There's a dot. There's a
Yeah.
fraud. Now look at this over here. See, that's a fraud too. They're connected. See how they're
Yeah.
connected? I'm connecting dots. So just like a connect the dots picture, right? You get the picture and you see all these little dots, but you can't tell what it's a picture of.
Can
But
you
when you
clarify
connect the
the
dots,
frauds? Can you clarify the frauds? I know you and I spoke about it, but for the audience, you know, it's what
sure.
are the dots? Yeah, just let's get some meat here for what frauds do you see that you were connecting in your book?
Okay, so I mentioned about 10 or so frauds, but there's four big ones, and most of the book revolves around exposing four big frauds, which are all characterized as wars. That's psychologically important,
Yes.
ideologically important. It fits in with the Matthias Desmond's idea of mass formation. We
Yes.
have to fight. Well, we have to fight against something.
Hmm.
And as soon
Right.
as you hear the word fight, then you know you should be triggering some spiritual understanding in your head. Because anyway, so the four main frauds, all wars: the war on drugs,
Hmm.
the war on terror,
Hmm.
the war on the climate,
Hmm.
and the war on the virus.
Right. And we make they make no progress on any of them.
Of course not, because they're not really wars. They're
Exactly.
businesses. Like the war on drugs
Absolutely.
is a business,
Oh, yeah.
right?
They'd have no interest in stopping any of those.
No, no, not at all. So I kind of try to present enough evidence because the book is about evidence.
Good.
And let me just kind of segue into what is fraud. So because I have a chapter that starts, okay, what is fraud? Because most people don't understand exactly what this is. And a fraud is not the same as a hoax. Many people say, oh, this COVID-19 is a hoax. No, a hoax is something different. A hoax is simply either a humorous or a
Mhm.
malicious deception.
Mhm.
Okay. For example, if you hold a surprise birthday party for a friend, that's a hoax. That's a humorous hoax.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
lot less serious, isn't it? To me, it
Well, but
strikes
there's
me as less malicious than a fraud.
yeah,
Plan.
it's humor. So a hoax is either a humorous or a malicious deception. So a surprise birthday party is a humorous deception,
Right.
right? Now, a fraud, however, is something different. There's always a purpose behind a fraud that's hidden.
Long term,
And
maybe. Like,
we're a longer term usually
yes.
than a hoax. Now, I use the example of the great Bre-X fraud. Do you remember that?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so Bre-X was the greatest gold mining fraud in history, right? For the sake of our readers, it won't take long. Let me briefly kind of outline. So Bre-X, Canadian company, a gold exploration company headquartered in Calgary,
Mhm.
shares traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange, had experienced senior executives. I mean, it was a real
Right.
legitimate
Right.
company doing legitimate exploration. It was exploring for gold in Indonesia. Now, it might seem strange, but Indonesia is actually a good choice.
Mhm.
Indonesia is home to one of the largest and highest grade and most profitable gold mines in the world.
Right. Right.
So they were exploring there. Now, as the results of their exploration were gradually released over a period of years, which is normally what happens,
Mhm.
it slowly revealed that this was a geologically normal gold deposit, but unusually rich in gold. Okay.
So
So
what's the fraud?
what's the fraud? See, all of that was true.
Yeah.
All of that was above board. So all over the world, mining analysts started following the company,
Mhm.
reporting on its thing, recommending the shares. The shares skyrocketed.
Right.
By the time
Right.
I heard about it, like the shares were already $100
Right.
a
So
share. So
yeah.
well, I missed this one. Okay, here's the fraud.
Yeah. Let's get this
So
fast. So we have so much. Yeah.
okay, right on. Okay, here's the fraud. It was the largest example of the oldest gold mining fraud trick in the books. They salted the assays. So in gold mining, you drill out cores of rock, you grind parts of that into powder, and you send them off to a lab to be analyzed for their mineral content. That's called an assay. So what
Okay.
you do is you sprinkle a little gold dust into the ground up rock before you send it to the lab.
Oh.
Now, so what the chief geologist, Michael de Guzman, what he did was he was very meticulous in his salting of the assays. So
Oh.
he made the results look like a perfectly normal gold deposit, but very, very high grade.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
it
So
it's likely that the chief geologist, Michael de Guzman, is the only person who knew about the fraud.
wow.
Even the company president, who was later dragged into court and stuff and accused of fraud, he said he knew nothing about it, and
Right.
he was acquitted. So likely that. So another lesson from this, couple lessons from this. First of all, you don't need a lot of people to conspire to
Right.
commit fraud.
That's really
Okay,
important. Yes.
but what you do need, second thing, what you do need is a whole lot of people to be drawn in and fooled by it.
Yes.
And there were thousands of people all over the world who recommended the stock, who commented
Mhm.
on it, etc. Bought the stock, thousands. Okay,
Mhm.
so
That's a great
and then
analogy. Yeah, that,
yeah.
and
So another thing, the third really important was what revealed this fraud. Well, the gold mining company, they're kind of a diversified company. The gold mining company, Freeport-McMoRan, who runs this
right.
largest, the Degrassi miners, I can't remember what it's called in Indonesia. They partnered with Bre-X to develop a mine there, right? Now,
Mhm.
Freeport-McMoRan did not accept any of the previous assays. They drilled their own drill holes right
Oh.
beside the Bre-X drill holes, did their own assays, and like the results were all over newspapers all over the world in
Oh,
the
so
headlines.
they caught them by
Yeah,
doing their own independent research.
that's right.
That's kind of
That's
funny
right.
about how we learn to catch these guys now. It's independent
Exactly.
media, and that's why they're
Yeah,
shutting down independent media and
of
researchers.
course, of course. So
Brilliant.
I say,
Yeah, great
like
analogy.
de
Yeah.
Guzman fooled all the world's gold mining experts. So it's not experts that reveal a
No.
fraud, it's evidence. You
Yes.
must look for evidence, which is why my whole
Oh.
book, I go through and say, here's the evidence.
Oh,
Don't
excellent.
don't
Yeah.
don't
Don't.
listen to any of the experts, because we have this, everybody's asking,
Yeah.
who do you trust? Who do you trust? Well, begin by trusting no one. Don't
Good
look for
idea.
experts, look
Yeah.
for evidence.
Do you know
And you
what?
must look
That's
yourself.
brilliant. And it's a great thing to tell people when they're talking to others, maybe trying to wake them up. Don't trust me. I say that to people now. Don't believe me. That throws them off. Like, hey, I'm just giving this information. Don't believe what I say either. Do your own independent research, but
Yeah.
make sure you exclude the mainstream media or all the mainstream Google sites because they don't have accurate information. It's hard to fight against with evidence, so-called, we know some of this evidence is real, and it has to be available on government websites for this massive fraud that we're under, but still people won't look at it. So that's another aspect. But let's dive into some of these topics. So we're talking about one of the things we were going to discuss is material reality versus non-material reality. I don't know if you're ready to segue into there.
Yeah,
okay, so
absolutely.
let's dive in, because I want to hit some of these points in your book. Just explain what you mean by that briefly, and then we're going to move into the next topic, which I think is hot too.
Yeah, absolutely, because this is so foundational, and I have not come across anybody anywhere talking about it, not with regard to these, frauds, what's going or anything. But
so what do you mean?
And so I have a chapter on philosophy, like where did these ideas come from? Because I take this quote from the great 20th century economist Ludwig von Mises. He said, the fate of civilization rests on the ideas that motivate the masses.
That is excellent. Yes. And I love your quote by Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Solzhenitsyn.
So Solzhenitsyn as well. Yes, that's profound. Yes.
So these ideas. So what really are the ideas that motivate the masses? And most of us, the vast majority of us, like, we don't want anything to do with philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And yet all of us have some philosophy. We all have what we call a worldview. That is how we see the world, how we interpret the world, and how we see ourselves in that world. That's our worldview. And it comes from a philosophy. I call it the default philosophy of the world, because if you don't think about what your philosophy is, then you are simply accepting and absorbing a philosophy that is presented to you and given to you. It's part of mind control, but we won't get into that.
Yeah,
So what is...
I have to say, though, even with this quote with Solzhenitsyn, he talks about live not by lies, and the philosophy, and that's so brilliant in itself, because really we've learned the philosophy of who knows how long, I mean, last 100 years as a minimum, has been based on almost a complete lie everywhere. Every single area is a factual, evidence-based lie. Yeah. So that's how people are basing their worldview and their philosophy. I mean, that can destroy a human psyche to realize that the lie is that great. I mean, some people just can't take it. Yeah. Absolutely.
I talk about that in my book. Okay, but material reality versus non-material reality. So this is really part of art of psychology, or not psychology, sorry, philosophy.
Okay.
And like the philosophy of the dominant philosophy for the last 150 odd years has been what we call materialist philosophy, which is based on the idea that only material things exist. That is what we can perceive with our five senses. We can see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, or touch it, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, this comes out of the Enlightenment thinkers who in essence said, okay, science is only going to deal with what we can perceive with our five senses. The material world. We're not going to talk about, and this was partly a reaction to the trial of Galileo and the overreach by the church, the Catholic Church mainly, but the Protestant churches as well, to kind of to try to say, well, you can't say the sun is the center of the universe because this goes against our religion. This is now blasphemy, right? And so the scientists kind of as a protection. So, okay, nothing that we do in science says anything about God or religion. We're only going to focus on material things. That's science. Well, 100 years later, then we had philosophers say, oh, well, yeah, that's all that exists because there is no God. Right? There is only material reality exists. Now, an important thing is that they assumed, and it remains an assumption, that the human mind itself and consciousness is produced by the brain. It's chemicals or stuff in the brain. Like our mind is simply a product of the brain. It's material, but someday we'll understand the chemistry of the brain and how it works and stuff. But right now, well, even today, we have no idea. As the great neurosurgeon, Dr. Eben Alexander said, and it was so beautiful, I memorized it. He said, medical science has no idea how the brain gives rise to consciousness.
Oh, beautiful. Right.
And the truth is
Yeah.
that the brain does not give rise to consciousness. There
Yes.
is no evidence to support that idea. And there's a whole wealth of evidence to support the idea that consciousness somehow exists independent of the brain. It seems to exist throughout our body, not just in our brains, and it
Mhm.
seems to extend actually beyond our bodies. And we
Yes.
seem to be connected in consciousness to, like, we don't understand consciousness, but it's definitely not material. So going back, materialist philosophy says only material things exist. And I say, this is ludicrous.
Yes.
The mind and consciousness is not material. Every one of us knows we have a mind. We have got to accept the fact that there is something that we can call non-material reality.
Is this the struggle in this era, or I don't know if struggle is the right word, but is this the phenomena we're seeing? Is the struggle past material to move into, I mean, our the consciousness of humanity, and that has
It's
been
it's
repressed in a way for so long. The war, we have heard the terms the war on consciousness, and this infusion of God back, this God non-material realm, which is so huge
yeah,
in on our day-to-day life, which will actually improve humanity in the future. But do you think that's the core struggle within each human being right
it's a
now?
core confusion. Okay,
Yeah.
because nobody talks about it, and we talk about things that are not material as if they were material. And
Mhm.
this ties into the ideas of Matthias Desmond. It ties into totalitarianism and explains why we have mass murder in totalitarianism. So let me be clear on this. The things that do not exist in material reality are things like ideas,
Mhm.
concepts, mental constructs,
Mhm.
theory. A theory, by definition, is an idea. It's not
Interesting.
real. It's an
Right.
idea. And even things we don't think about, like, but categories. Now, people who study philosophy understand this completely. Categories do not have a material existence. And I use this example in the book. For example,
Really?
take the category of chairs. I'm sitting in a chair. I can touch it, I can see it, I can feel it, rub my hand against it, makes a sound. You're sitting in a chair. We understand that individual chairs have a physical material reality, but the category of chairs, there are billions of chairs in the world, but the category itself is a mental construct. It's
Really?
an idea.
I just wanted to
It
add
exists.
this, just because you've touched on something, like I just bubbled up in me, and I didn't want to lose this. I've noticed in the last, I don't know how long, they've been trying to push us more away from this sort of non-material world into the material world, even with our thinking, and they're pushing people into sort of this data-driven mind. So even creative people I know have abandoned their creative pursuits, and they're just like pursuing data, like, so more of a left brain focus, as opposed to, is it the left side of your brain that's sort of categorizing and analyzing and
Yeah, the
labeling?
logical. Yeah, the
Yeah, so
logical.
versus the
But
right.
yeah,
And I always thought categorizing was on the left, and and that's part of that whole material world. And on the right is this creative, free-flowing ideas that we all need to kind of reignite, and that beauty of our left and right connection. So did you want to comment on that as well, like integrating our left and right brain, and to live more of a balanced life with material, non-material, and
yeah,
maybe, as our creator made us, like with these two hemispheres. I mean, it really plays into this
yeah.
material versus non-material, from what you're saying. I mean, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, that kind of takes us off in a different direction, but you're absolutely right. I mean, our whole world and most of us in this world have completely lost any sense of balance in our lives, right?
Yes.
The left brain, right brain balance, the masculine, feminine balance. That, like,
Yeah.
everything is at war within ourselves, within us. Anyway, but that's not really where I wanted to go with this
Okay, yeah,
understanding.
keep going then.
Okay,
Yeah, keep going.
so material, so idea, so categories
Mhm.
do not exist in material reality.
Hmm,
They
interesting.
are
Okay.
ideas. They
Right,
are
okay.
mental constructs. Now,
All right.
this is really important because something that does not exist in material reality cannot think, cannot act, and cannot be acted upon.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the key errors of Karl Marx 150 years ago, and that it carries all the way through his philosophical descendants in the 20th and in the 21st century, is that he talks about groups, right? For example, you probably remember Karl Marx said there's two classes in the world. There's the bourgeoisie and the proletariats. Now, in the modern society, we don't have proletariat and bourgeoisie, but we still have the world. Essentially, you could look at, you see, the bourgeoisie were those who owned the means of production. This is how Karl Marx describes it. And the proletariat were the workers who supplied their labor. And there was an eternal class conflict that all of history could be explained and understood in terms of this class conflict between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Now, essentially, in more general terms, between a small class of oppressors and a large class of oppressed.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And so that led him to the conclusion that, well, the oppressed majority has got to rise up and violently destroy the system of the oppressors and create a new system. So Marxism is intimately tied up with violence and destruction.
Yes.
They are together one and the same thing. Now we see this today in all of society being divided into oppressors and oppressed. The victim class, right?
Right. And is this the categories you're talking about? How, I mean, how does it how does this tie in? So to like genocide and totalitarian regimes, and of course we know we've got to break this cycle because it's an endless loop if you keep buying into this. If humanity keeps buying into this cycle.
Well, it's not endless. It ends. There's Matthias Desmet says, and I think he's exactly right. There's two ways that it can end. Okay, so let me then draw the connection. So these classes, these categories of people, they don't exist in material reality. They only exist in non-material. They're ideas. Okay,
yeah, so now let's go past.
Okay, so that brings us to the ideas of Matthias Desmet. Do you want me to try to quickly encapsulate them for our listeners?
I think everyone knows. So just in like just a little bit. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So Matthias Desmet says what's going on is mass formation psychosis, also known as crowd formation, also known as mass hypnosis. And this kind of study in psychology came out of trying to understand, why do people behave so strangely in crowds? Like in a crowd, people do things that they would never do individually. And after the fact, they look back on that and they say things like that, like, I don't know why I did that. That's not me. Like, I don't do those kind of things. So this part of group psychology, and he said it's always based on an ideology. And we see this in the Nazis, we see it in the Bolsheviks. Every time there's a totalitarian, it starts with an ideology. Okay. It leads to mass formation where a certain portion of the people, and he says it's amazingly consistent, 30% of people are actually hypnotized. And one of the characteristics of hypnosis, all of us have seen some kind of a stage hypnotist entertainer, right? And the people who he hypnotizes, like they don't perceive things outside the narrow focus that the hypnotist has directed them to focus their consciousness on, right? And the same thing happens with these people. That's why you try to talk to somebody about this climate change nonsense. You try to present them with facts and scientific evidence, and it's just like they can't see it.
Yes.
It just you can't talk to them. And I've wondered for years, like, what's that about?
Right.
They're literally hypnotized. And with the COVID thing, same thing.
Yes.
There's a certain number of people, they're just not amenable to the process of rational thought. He says they literally cannot perceive things that are outside the narrow focus of their narrative.
Right. Now, and some will never wake up. We have to realize some with the, through what the events that are the unfolding, plus through patient, presentation
or disaster
information or whatever it is, will wake up, and some will never. And I don't know what percent we're at now of people who are awake, could be
Yeah.
15, 20, but
Anyway, so the next important thing is this: they can't perceive things
right.
outside the narrow focus of their attention. And this is where am I going with this? Okay, so he
So
says that there
connecting
is
this
this.
to what, horrifically,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were saying the two choices that this could end really badly or another way. I mean,
We'll
but these
get there.
people are under hypnosis, and the totalitarian regimes are formed with this because they are just like working in lockstep with the oppressors to oppress the rest.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, so it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
we'll get there. Okay, so
It's
the
not, it's not remotely
what
funny. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just like it feels like you're in a book that you're reading about, the Russian Revolution, except it's your life and we're living in this world. And
yeah.
it's so disturbing and yet unbelievable at the same time. So yeah, so
Yeah.
keep going. This is
Okay,
great
so
here.
okay, so the object of anxiety. This is really important in what Matthias
Okay.
Desmet says. Okay, so what happens? One of the things that has to occur first for mass formation to happen is there has to be a lot of free floating anxiety in people. People
Right.
are anxious
Mhm.
but they don't really know why. Okay,
Right.
so then someone, an authority figure, comes along with a story, a narrative that says, oh, we're all anxious and all of our problems are because of that.
Right.
That's the object of anxiety. And people are able to say, oh, they put their
Right.
anxiety all on that object of anxiety. But notice that the object of anxiety is almost always something that does not exist in material reality. It's a category, an idea. So for the Bolsheviks, it was the aristocracy. That's a
Mhm.
category.
Right.
There's individual aristocrats, okay?
Okay.
But the aristocracy is a category. For
Mhm.
for Hitler and the Nazis, it was the Jews. It's all their fault. It's all
Yeah.
the Jews. Now the Jews is a category.
Mm.
Individual Jews exist, of course, in material reality, but the Jews is a category. So
What's
how
the
do you fight?
category now? What's our category now?
Oh, but to see, there's multiple frauds and multiple categories. Okay, so there's the anti-vaxxers.
Yeah. Mhm.
There's the disinformation spreaders.
Mhm.
There's the science deniers.
Mhm.
There's a there's a whole
Climate
bunch.
deniers. Yeah,
Climate deniers. That's right.
Yeah.
There's those categories. And so that's a category.
Eh.
And we have to fight against, so we engaged all the people affected by mass formation. There's this great motivational and psychologically satisfying and social. Now they're socially part of something. They're part of this group, and they engage in a noble struggle, a battle against the object of anxiety. But the thing is, you cannot battle against something that does not exist in material reality. It cannot be acted upon. It cannot act, it cannot think, it cannot be acted upon. So what do you end up doing? You're a science denier, kill him.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what cancel culture does, right? We destroy these people. We remove them from social media. We get them fired from their jobs. We boycott and bankrupt their businesses. We take them off social media.
Right.
We
We all
deplatform them,
know that.
like all
Yeah.
this stuff. And as the Canadian philosopher, I quote him in my book, Stéphane Molyneux, said, cancel culture is a dress rehearsal for mass murder.
Mhm.
Because if you can cancel people from social media, and if you're okay with canceling people from social media, you'll be okay with them being canceled from society.
Well,
And that's why all of us have asked for like 3 generations, like, how did people go along with this mass murder of the Jews in Nazi Germany, with the mass murders? Solzhenitsyn says that communism killed 60 million Russians. Like, how do people go along with that? Because they're focused on destroying the object of anxiety. But, and this is a spiritual principle, hatred must be focused on something material. It must be focused on a real person. You cannot hate something that doesn't exist in material reality. So the hatred is focused on a person. We're going to destroy that person. We have to kill that person in order to get rid of racism and sexism and all these things, whatever the latest thing is that we're going to fight against this by killing. And it will come to killing. This will be mass murder. It's unavoidable.
This is really, really scary what you're saying. And I mean, I wanted to see if you see another path other than other than what you're describing, with so many people now waking up and even across every country, and then how we can obviously turn to God as a refuge, and how that will help us practically. Because I think a lot of people who might listen to this now they're already kind of overwhelmed and stressed to the max if you've been awake, and people who've been fighting are burnt out, stressed out, at using resources. Some are wanting to move into intentional communities and wall up and hole up. Is there an opportunity for a different outcome here in your view, and if so, how? And how can we mitigate the obviously the damage as well if it starts to go down that other path, the darker path?
That's the escape to freedom. It's the subtitle of my book, right? The title is what the hell's going on?
Yes.
And the subtitle is The Web of Fraud That is Enslaving Everyone and How We Can Escape to Freedom. So the last chapter is called The Escape to Freedom.
Oh, now, I forgot to ask you to tell the audience as well where they can reach you. So we've gotten into this great chat, but just because this amazing book is coming out, where can they find your book? And if they want to follow you, what's your website?
Oh, yeah, my website is, because I'm a spiritual teacher now. It's my third career, spiritual teacher, author, speaker. My website is called cominghomespirit.com, www.cominghomespirit.com.
Okay, beautiful. So let's shift in. Well, yeah, you've got so much to say. We could go for hours, but yeah. So I know this is such a huge question I just asked you about, avoiding this outcome. It does seem inevitable, which is very dark. But how you can mitigate it or avoid it altogether, for people, and then the whole beauty of standing with God, turning to God in this time, and how that can help.
Absolutely. There's the future is never inevitable. We choose. We get to choose. I mean, spiritually speaking, many of our listeners will understand that the only moment in time that is real, that really exists, is the present moment.
Yes.
Right. This instant here now, and it's gone. This instant now, and it's gone. An instant in the future, it has not arrived. An instant in the past is gone forever. It's only in this present moment that we can choose. And we have always like a massive number of choices we can make of how we are going to act in the present moment. And depending on how we act in this moment, the future potentialities change.
Yes, I agree. I believe that too. Absolutely. Okay, so
we have these ideologies. It's not just one ideology in our world today. It's many. Yes. Every fraud is based on an ideology.
Right. We've got that. Yes.
Exactly as Matthias Desmond says, a quasi-scientific ideology.
Right.
And all of them are leading to mass formation, and all of them are leading to totalitarianism. Now, where does it go? Yeah, how and where does it end? So history shows us, and I think Matthias Desmond describes this fairly well, that there's two ways. When we look at, for example, Nazi Germany and the other, how did they end? In the absolute destruction, both the material, social, governmental, like all the absolute destruction of Nazi Germany, and the complete rebuilding from the ashes of new institutions, new structures, everything new. That's one way, and that's possible. That's a possible future reality for us, is that the whole world destroys itself, and that whether or not there's anything left to rebuild from is, unknown. But the other thing that Matthias Desmond is very, very clear on, he says that this totalitarianism comes from an ideology
Right.
And the only way to break the totalitarianism is to break the ideology. You cannot
Absolutely.
it's not about taking care of the bad guys. Like some people, oh, we need to get these bad guys out of government and put new people into government. Some people say, oh, the white hats are going to come and kill the bad hats and then everything will be okay. That's not how it works. Okay.
Right. I
You must,
agree. Yeah.
that's not how totalitarianism was formed. It's not just a group of bad guys who have taken control.
Oh,
No, it's an ideology.
and that's
The
taken
only way
control
to
over the
break it,
masses. Yeah, the masses,
yeah,
they
the
have
only
to
way to break it
realize.
is to break the ideology. So how
Yes.
do we do that? Well, I say
Yes.
the escape to freedom is the return to God. Because we don't have time to get into it now, but all of these totalitarian ideologies, they're all founded on an attack against God. And you would
Atheism.
ask that,
Yes.
well, it's more than atheism, because you had asked me before about Satanism. We want to get into all of that. In its simplest and most basic sense,
Hmm.
what is Satan and what is Satanism, right? Satan, those many will remember, right? He was the fallen angel, the light bearer who rebelled against God. And Satanism is always an attack against God.
Yes.
Any attack against God is, in its most general sense, Satanism and a following of Satan. So all of these totalitarian ideologies fight against God because they must destroy God. Because as the great, well,
But
I think
they
she's great
never
anyway,
can. They never can.
you never can. Hannah Arendt said totalitarianism ultimately must control reality itself. And therefore it must destroy God, because any understanding of spiritual reality and of God and the divine, the sacred, it presents a different understanding of reality than whatever the totalitarian ideology is. So it must be destroyed.
Hmm.
So
But to
all of
have
these,
total control, in order to
absolutely,
keep the control over the masses, which is why, they are moving towards this transhumanism agenda, because controlling not just people physically through the food and the drugs and everything else, but controlling their actual thinking and their
yep,
emotions through mind control technologies is their next step, disturbing step in this total enslavement of humanity.
absolutely.
You know,
And I explained in the book too, how transhumanism, because they say, oh, this is the next evolution for humans. No, 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 no.
slavery,
This is
total slavery.
this is not human evolution. This is human devolution.
Absolutely.
This is a movement to a lower level of humanity, actually the elimination of humanity, because without free will, we are not human.
Right.
This is a lower level of spiritual existence. There's two ways to kind of to destroy yourself spiritually, to remove yourself, and to devolve yourself as a spiritual being. One is to immerse yourself into chronic consciousness of fear,
Hmm.
because fear and love are the two great opposites. And we know
Yes.
St. John tells us God is love. Now, we've
Hmm.
always understood that as a metaphor. I'm convinced John meant it also literally. God is love. If you want to
Yes.
be God-like, if you want to ascend, to move to a higher level of spiritual consciousness, you must move more towards love. The opposite is
Yes.
to move towards fear. And the
And
more
that's
you move to
anti-God in a way.
anti-God, that
That
is
is more
fear.
satanic.
It
Yes.
is satanic, because it
I
is against God.
what's, and I love you, the way you describe all these things. I'll have to pick up your book. It sounds amazing. But the even within in your own individual experience and within mine, as we've been experiencing such incredible fear porn, and just watching people you've loved or love or care about becoming totally caught up in this mass formation, and there's the pain of them leaving, and the fear of what might come when you see and read about other totalitarian regimes. You have to have a spiritual practice to lift that fear out of your body and to
Yep.
just recenter in love. And I do that now every day, because
Yep.
that's like that's my sanctuary. And it
Yep.
is absolutely incredibly helpful. For every person to recognize the fear and move back into love. And I don't know if you talk about ways that you can move into love. Love and forgiveness in your heart too, because forgiveness is critical with a lot of the abuses that have taken place and what's happened. When people are locked in fear, they become abusive to others. And I've witnessed that in my own life. And you have to say they are locked in fear. You can see the fear in some people and you forgive them quickly and keep that love in your own heart as a spiritual person. That'll help you through. Can you describe some of the ways turning to God will literally help in this from an outcome standpoint and from an individual standpoint in this battle?
Right. Sure. It's kind of a theme that travels throughout my whole book, that we're in a war. It's fundamentally a spiritual war, but of course it manifests as a physical war too. And it's fifth generation warfare.
Yeah, go through that. Go through quickly, because that was so interesting. I think people would be interested in that. Just quickly, then back to the God. Like, why is this fifth generation? So first, second, third, because it's excellent.
Okay, now this was new to me, right? Anyway, so I just started answering your last question, but we'll segue into this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so fifth generation. Now this is American military strategists and thinkers have come up with this idea of dividing the history of warfare into these different, what they call generations. So first generation was basically everything up to about the mid 19th century, where you have up to the development of rifled firearms, where the tactics are essentially line and column tactics and an orderly battlefield. Second generation warfare includes rifled firearms and a dominance of artillery, where your tactics, this is World War I, right? Where your tactics are mainly based around massive artillery to destroy the enemy's defenses, equipment, and personnel. And they're still trying to, the battlefield becomes increasingly disordered, but the commanders are still trying to impose order on the battlefield. And then third generation warfare, characterized by the Second World War, is where, as far as tactics go, you just open yourself up to a disordered battlefield, and you don't try to impose order on it. You try to take advantage of the disorder of the battlefield. So it includes highly mobile forces, effective aerial attack to take out key points of resistance and enemy artillery and stuff, rapidly mobile forces, surrounding, outflanking, moving into the enemy's rear, going around points of strong resistance, to take advantage. And using these tactics, for example, nobody really knows military history, the history of war anymore, and I only know a little bit. But for example, in January of 1940, if you looked at on paper and you said, well, the French army is a pretty equal match to the German army, but they were destroyed in 6 weeks because the French commanders were fighting with second generation warfare tactics.
Right.
The German army was fighting with third generation warfare tactics.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And so what's fourth? Yeah.
Then fourth generation war is insurgency wars of all types, where the lines, it becomes increasingly chaotic. The lines between combatants and civilians, the lines between guerrilla warfare, right? Insurgency. This is the Vietnam War, for example.
Right. I was just going to say,
never knew. You go into a village, who's friend and who's enemy. The children in that village might be planting landmines on the paths.
Right. Okay.
Right? And they're all happy. And the Americans, yes, they love you. But they don't tell you, go down that road, and half of you will blow up in the landmines. Right. Like you don't know. It's all confused. Now, so insurgency of all types, fourth generation. Fifth generation, which is what we're in now, doesn't even seem like war.
Right.
It's not kinetic. It's not kinetic. Nobody shoots.
Silent war.
It's a silent war. So it's political warfare, it's lawfare, it's economic warfare, it's biological warfare, it's psychological warfare, it's subversion, right? Subversion of your institutions. It's all of this stuff. What we're seeing, once you realize, this isn't just an accident, This is fifth generation warfare.
Mhm.
This is what we're in. This is what we're experiencing.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you for explaining that. It's beautiful. I mean, I felt it was so important for you to explain that. And
yeah,
now maybe how we can turn to God. I mean, it seems like everyone's like, oh my God, do I got to get a gun? Or this,
yeah,
that's the self-protection response is, do I have to
yeah,
fight? So
yeah.
what's the place for God in a fifth generation war as your,
Okay, so yeah, on several levels. There's, of course, there's the material level and there's the spiritual level too. But well, on a material level, then the what we need to do, all of us people, is to engage in essentially a fourth generation insurgency war against the fifth generation war that's being applied against us. And fourth insurgency wars are exceedingly difficult to fight. These are the only kinds of wars the United States Army has ever lost, is fourth generation insurgency wars. And particularly when you're fighting an enemy that is vastly superior in numbers, that is decentralized. Like one of the features of a fourth generation insurgency war is to make yourself untargetable rather than impregnable. Okay, so we can't necessarily defend ourselves as individuals, but we can take steps to make ourselves untargetable. They are targeting us through social media and online presence and all this kind of stuff, through the digital IDs, through and through the currency, the digital currencies that are coming in. These are all ways to target you. So don't participate in any of this. On a spiritual level, I say that our strategy is love, our tactic is forgiveness, and our weapon is nonviolent non-cooperation. You simply need to not cooperate. Do not accept any more injections into your body. Do not accept the digital currency. Do not accept a digital ID. Do not accept this surveillance. Take steps to de-Google your life, because they are keeping you under surveillance. I have a chapter that's titled Surveillance or Sovereignty. You cannot have both. You will choose one of the other. If you want to be a sovereign individual, you must find ways to avoid their surveillance. This is essential to their success. As a fourth generation insurgency war, we must make ourselves untargetable.
and how do you do that?
Now, well, in some of those ways. Okay, if they can't surveil you, they
Oh, I
can't.
see.
That's
Yeah.
how they target you, right?
Right.
You
But
must find ways individually to escape their surveillance. That helps tremendously to make you untargetable. When the digital currencies come in, and they're absolutely coming in, there's no doubt about it. When the digital currencies come in, you must not enter that system. I think this will be like a big dividing line in all of their societies in the Western world. You either take part in their slave system by signing up for the digital currency, or you go your own separate ways, and we will find other ways to transact business, other ways. We have to build what Václav Havel, maybe our listeners don't remember him. Václav Havel was the great Czechoslovakian dissident, and later the first president of the free and independent Czechoslovakia. And he wrote this book back in the 80s, I think, called the Power of the Powerless, a little book.
oh,
But
interesting.
the key idea is what he called parallel structures. And Kat, you mentioned before we came on air, Catherine Austin Fitts, she mentions this too. Other people mentions it. We must build parallel structures. When you're fighting against a totalitarian control system that controls everything, and we're living in it right now, whether we're willing to admit it or not, they control everything. We must build, the only escape from that is to build parallel structures. You need to build your own social structure. You need to build your own community of where you're free to pursue art or literature, or even a free conversation. We cannot have free conversations anymore. Pass along books, and these communities are forming all over the world.
Oh,
Hundreds,
yes.
thousands of them, right? So these are the parallel structures. For medicine, as we've seen, is now completely corrupted and controlled. You need to find
And
medical people
yes.
who will exit the system, pay them cash out of your pocket, right?
Yes.
They're controlled by whoever pays them. I went and talked to my own doctor, who I rarely see because I do my best to stay healthy, but I kind of
Mhm.
made an appointment with him and went to talk to him. And he said, sorry, I can't do that. I asked him first, can you write me a prescription for ivermectin? He says, no, I can't do that. I'll
Right.
lose my license. I'll lose my license. Like, I got a family, I got kids, I got a mortgage. Like, I can't, and if they take my license away, I can't work anywhere. Right. So yeah, people are captured because
But
they
yet he
rely on
could
their
work.
income.
But that's a mindset too. He's in his
Yes.
own mind. That's an example of exactly the problem. Is everyone's like, not me, I can't do it. I've got mortgages,
Yep.
I've got material commitments.
Yep.
Whereas they don't realize that system's imploding anyways, and they're going to go down with it. Are they going to be part of the new system that there's already so many doctors building private clinics? Those are going to be the ones I want to go to, not the one who
Yep.
didn't live up to their Hippocratic oath and do the right thing for the
Yep.
patient, the ones that had the courage to break free. And
Yep.
maybe this is a good segue to talk about again, and it is a spiritual concept, the concept of courage. And because I believe courage comes, it's connected with your heart, but that's our connection to God and to love is through your heart as well. And I think they go hand in hand, courage and love. And that's where I'm trying to step into it. Like, I even had moments of fear bubbling up in me as you were saying, you have to lay low, because here I am doing a podcast. Tish Talk, come and get me. I'm going against the system. I'm like, sheesh. It does
Yeah.
build that
Yeah.
fear, and I had to let it flow out, because a lot of people I know, and even like well-known people, they say, I've been doing this for 15 years, Tish. Like, there's so many of us. Once you step into courage and you start to follow the path of truth and speak out, it does give you, I think, a certain level of protection spiritually from God. And I just
Oh, yes.
so you see the stories over and over in totalitarian regimes, the people who beg, 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 they go right away. And you say, not me, no fucking way, you can
Yeah.
go. There is something, although that's a really severe example that concludes with murder, but that's where they're going. You have to firmly step into your sovereignty in this time and say, not me, I'm not part of that. No way,
Yep.
I'm not in.
Yep.
And then when you do step into your power and you step in with a loving heart and you start being that I don't want to use the word leader, but when you do it, other people start standing up too. It's harder to be the
Yes.
first few, but it's critical for people to break free. And that story, I just had to say, because the story of that doctor, and what I see in that person is fear. And that person is sticking in the slave system because of fear. And that's just going to affect them. You feel powerful and empowered and in God when you step into that courage and love. And I do want to be here for the future very much, and for my children, but still I'm called to step out and call out some of this stuff, like many people. And there's been a lot of beautiful things that have come from that. There's been pain and with relationships mostly, but meeting new people, the people who are doing the same, I think that's the path forward.
Yes, and that is happening. It's been going on for quite a few years, and it's picking up steam. And I think in the next year, especially when they come out with the digital currency, the central bank digital currencies, the trickle will turn into an avalanche, because more and more people will just say, look, like, that's the last step. If I go there, like, there's no escape. So I'm going to escape now. Now, yeah, to everybody who's thinking, oh, I'm scared, I can't do that, I got my mortgage, whatever. You know what? Thousands and thousands of people have already been fired, lost their jobs, whatever. Like, there's lots of people ahead of you. And lots of other people are just saying, no. I mean, in a sense, that's why I left teaching. I said, maybe you're going to treat other people like this, but you're not treating me like this. Sayonara.
Right.
I was looking for a job when I found this one. I'm out of here.
Yes, right.
I'm done with this. You're not treating me that way.
Good.
So So yeah, so here I am trying to make it as an author. So please buy my book.
Yes, well, that's it. I want them to. Same with the, yeah, subscribe to my podcast. Yeah. I mean, the good thing about people, they can listen, and they're learning, and then it helps them to develop their own courage muscle.
Yes.
So, I mean, I want to go back to this concept. And even though I was experiencing my own fear moment as you were explaining that, I wanted to reinforce this. Like, it's obvious, the playbook, they've used it over and over. We see horrified, we see people in our own circles who maybe have known us for years or decades, who've said they love you, just break suddenly, bang. Some of them out of fear that they don't want to be part of a group that's stepping out, some of them because they're involved in the mass formation. If they continue along this path, we'll see more genocide. I know the shots are killing so many people tragically, horrifically, but is it a fifth warfare? Is it self-destruction is their goal, or will they actually resort to overt tactics like taking people into camps and things like that? Do you think it will get that far?
Oh yes, I think so, absolutely. I mean, it's already happened in Australia, right? They isolated people in these isolation camps, concentration camps. Basically, they weren't sick. Like if you test positive on a fraudulent test that where 95% positives or false positives, or something like that, like this is fraud. And yes, it will absolutely happen here, both in Canada and the United States. The camps are already built.
They also have these camps. Is it something, I'm not sure, you might know, Saskatchewan or Winnipeg, they have these climate like camps for people who break the climate rules. Did you hear about that? These huge facilities.
I have not. Yeah, I have not heard about that.
So that's the next thing. So I mean, that is
because they're just switching. Like all of these frauds have their own goals, their own kind of they're each is a different kind of vector of attack or a campaign. I call it the COVID-19 campaign.
Yeah.
Right? They're all working in concert. And if one of them kind of doesn't achieve its objectives very well, then the other ones will kind of pick up the slack. So now we see them kind of segueing from COVID back into climate. And now nitrogen is evil. Like, how bizarre. There's no science behind this.
No, war on the elements. It's almost
Are we going to demonize the whole table of elements, for goodness sakes?
It's so crazy when you look at it, and yet I can't help going back to what I see consistently when you talk about the patterns. We were talking about that. Everything is anti-life. It's a destruction of all life. And it's not just humans. It's a destruction even of our soil and our animals. I mean, I've told countless stories about the destruction of biodiversity. And this isn't done by God. God didn't do this. Is deliberate human poisoning and human destruction, deliberate. And they're trying to blame it on, this is the little guy, or it's all our fault, right? So we should just self-eliminate. Now you can press 5 if you want to have euthanasia, and they'll come right to your door. I think that's Saskatchewan. Horrifying.
Really?
Late-term abortions. Now in California, you can have an abortion after the baby's born. Isn't that so horrible? So it's an assault on all life. And where does this come from? Again, who is encapsulating it? How did these people get to this point that they would be so driven against all life in their efforts to go against God? It's their hate, their absolute defiance of God has taken to them this point where they're destroying all life. How do you get there? And
well, it's kind of funny. You're reminding me of something. Even decades ago, I would sometimes argue with people who are in favor of an abortion. I would jokingly say, "Oh, I could go along with abortion as long as we can do it retroactively, and I'd get you."
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, but now in California, they are doing abortions retroactively. Oh, I changed my mind. I don't want this kid after all.
I know, it's so horrifying. I mean, it's like a really, really bad, horrible, evil movie that we're living through, where most people don't see it. They're just like, that's fine.
So you asked, like, where does this come from? Second chapter of my book. is called the philosophy of death. That's what this philosophy, right from Karl Marx, right down to the default philosophy of the world today, is a philosophy of death. It has led to a culture of death. And we know that God is life. That which is opposed to life is death. That which is opposed to God is of Satan. It's all a manifestation of Satanism. All of this death.
It's all
Yes,
death.
absolutely. It's on a spiritual level, we can understand all of it as a rebellion against God, as Satanism.
Now
And
let's
it
go back.
manifests in myriad ways.
Yeah, let's go back to the comfort of God. I want to leave with this beautiful note, because a lot of people have been really scared, and I've dealt with this for 2 years almost, solid, helping people. And sometimes the person I was helping was me, right? You'd spend a day crying, releasing the sadness, the mourning, the friends, the love, all of these things, as they're oppressing us more and more, and you can feel it. But give your ideas of, not all about, just this whole thing, how people can turn to God, and how we can weather this storm as humans, when we have God in our lives, and we're turning to love, as opposed to getting sucked up in the fear, which is really you're basically part of what they want. You're self-destructing. You're turning towards death when you live in fear. Fear is how can you live a joyful life when you're completely ridden with fear? Now, at the same time, God wants us to prepare, right? Even with Noah and the flood, it's like you still need to build your ship and put some food away. So can you deal with those conflicting elements of the practical side of weathering the storm, but the spiritual side of weathering the storm as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as you might disagree with me on a practical level, still a good idea to have some food saved up. Still a good idea maybe to have some guns and ammunition. You might need them. Just in case. Good idea to have some gold and silver. I think it's probably a good idea to have some cash at home,
right?
A couple $1,000 just in cash for when. Don't leave it in the banks. Anyway, so that's on a practical, physical level. On a spiritual level, though. Okay, how do we embrace God? We don't have to look far. God is within us. Okay, those of us who know a little bit about the Bible, come from a Christian background, know St. Paul famously said, "Don't you know your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? God dwells within you." And also from St. Paul, his famous speech in Athens, "It is in God that we live and move and have our being." God is within us. We swim in God like a fish swims in water.
Oh, nice. Yes.
We cannot be apart from God. What we lack is the consciousness of that oneness with God.
Oh, we're separated through the assault on our consciousness. It's a war on our consciousness, really.
Yeah. We have a consciousness of separation, when what we seek is a consciousness of oneness with God. God is within. Go within. Since God is within you, everything you need is already within you. As the Wizard of Oz in the great, this is a sacred story. I didn't know this when I was younger, only realized it in the last few years. This is a sacred story. As the Wizard of Oz said to the lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, he said, "Oh, you already have what you seek." Right? He said to the lion, "You already have courage." To the Tin Man, you already have a heart, you already have love, it's already within you. To the Scarecrow, you already have a brain, you have intelligence, it's already within you. What you lack is the recognition that it's there. And because it had to be a physical, something in the play, in the book, he says, here's a trophy to recognize that you have it. Here's a little badge to recognize that you have courage. Here's your medal to recognize that you have courage. but what we need, but really the recognition is our own recognition. You mentioned
Yes.
the lack of courage earlier. No, you have the courage. It's within you already. You need
Mhm.
to only look within and realize that God has already placed the courage you need there, that
Mhm.
God is already with you. It's not possible for you to be apart from God.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And is there anything else that you wanted to say about, particularly here in Canada, we're both Canadians, about, the community side of finding other people to practice
Yes.
spiritual faith? And I also wanted to say, it doesn't have to be denominational. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to, opening your heart and your mind to any type of spiritual practice. I mean, someone might want to, investigate Buddhism, someone the origins of Christianity. Some people might want to question, is the Bible a psyop, without having someone repulsed and leaving the room because there has to be so dogmatic, and we've had these encounters. Just opening yourself up to a connection with God, however that might
Yep.
appear to you.
Yep. Yeah. And as I say in the upcoming book, that join whatever religious or spiritual community you want. Seek God in whatever group and along whatever path you think is right and leads to love. That's the key.
Yeah,
In
love.
truth,
Love
in
is
truth,
everything. Yes.
yeah, in truth, there are no wrong paths to God.
Absolutely. And it could also mean that you do not have a path that is with a group. It might be an individual pursuit through studying trees or just sitting in nature, or any
Yes.
other, obviously nature is intimately connected with God. Our creator created nature. So
Yes.
just being in nature, I find some of my most spiritual moments, particularly recently, are when I'm, up at my cottage alone in nature, and I've had these moments of profound bliss and connection that I haven't had before, because of being more aware of the assault on humanity has made me
Yes.
feel more responsible to preserve it and to cherish it. I feel like I could cry now, but there's the beauty of our world is immense once you start, opening yourself to that, and then your heart can just feel this immense love, which is, I feel like, the magnet of the love. And when you practice daily, so it doesn't have to be a specific, I go to church 10 a.m. It can just be getting quiet and trying to find that place within you where God can speak to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And importantly, Matthias Desmet says, in answer to the question, who doesn't get like captured by this
Yes.
mass formation hypnosis? He says people who have a strong connection to spiritual, a strong
Mm.
spiritual connection, not
Oh,
necessarily religious, right? I mean, many people
yes.
are kind of overtly religious, but don't really have a strong connection with
Yes.
their on a spiritual level. Okay, so
Yes.
a strong spiritual connection, a strong connection to nature and the land,
Right.
and a strong connection to a close social network. These three things are real. See, what's in it, and make the point frequently in the book too, that the ideology is not true. It's lies. That's why Solzhenitsyn said, live not by lies. Communism is a system of lies. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
reject the lies. Identify with what is true and real. All of this, the psyop that's going around us is creating a fantasy, an illusion of what's
Mm-hmm.
real. It's
Yeah.
not real.
Well, it's
Ground
interesting.
yourself in what is real, in
Yes.
spiritual reality, in nature, and in real people. The people around you are real. Ground yourself in secure relationships, and you maybe I'll just touch here if we can. I know we've gone longer than you wanted, but I also talked about in the book sort of where do we go, like all of these structures in society are in the process of self-destructing and collapsing.
Yes, and I
And
want
so
to, if I could put my hand up, I feel like, hey, I just want quickly, because I know I'll lose this forever. You said ground yourself and, spiritual connection. Yes. And we know some of the so-called religious people are some of the worst they've been. So it's not necessarily a matter whether you attend church or not, whether you're spiritually resilient. So nature and having a spiritual basis, which could include being moral or a decent human being or having convictions, because they've been obviously trying to corrupt morality. But third, this whole connection, having these relationships, the war on relationships has been intense. And I've experienced this myself. I've been putting out love to try to heal some of them, but the fear that's gripping these people is so enormous that they're literally doing the enemy's bidding by maintaining this distance, where these relationships could be supportive on both sides. But this war on the relationships is making it difficult for, I think, people who are isolated and alone, making it worse for them, as well as, I think that the communities might be faring better because a lot of people have found new friends. But that's something that can be quite challenging. We do need each other spiritually as humans. I mean, the importance of being together. Being alone is very, very, very difficult, isn't it?
Yes, this anyway. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying is absolutely happening. It's absolutely planned. It's the destruction of society, one relationship at a time, and it's the divide and conquer a strategy, right?
I go
We
against
divide
that.
us.
Yeah, we got to go
Yeah,
against that. That's why
yeah,
when you use love, even if someone disagrees with you, it's like, hey, that's great. Those are some simple things instead of getting aggravated and angry. That's, like you said,
yeah.
our
That's right.
strategy, right, is love. Or which one, the love and forgiveness in this fifth generation war. That's where you can
Yeah,
use it. So
that's
yeah,
right.
keep going.
That's
You're
right.
talking great. I just wanted to get that in about, you go ahead.
Yeah, like those who attack you and call you names. Oh, yeah, I love you. Let me hug you now, because based on on the way you're acting, you're going to be one of the first to die. I might not see you again. God bless you. It's been nice knowing you.
Yeah, you're off for your fifth shot or seventh.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so where was I at? Okay, so our response on a physical material level, and
Yes.
how do we rebuild? Okay, all of our governments are top down, right? I mean, I'm not sure how it is in every province, because the different provinces of Canada kind of emerged at different times. Here in Alberta, that was established as a province in 1907, I think,
Okay.
1905. Legally, the municipal governments are a legal creation of the federal government. No, the provincial government. Sorry, the provincial government,
Okay,
right?
right.
So, and the provincial government has the legal authority to come in and remove any town council, city council, if they're not running things properly, and it can be administered by the provincial. So it's a top down. This is the problem. We have had the increasing concentration of power, and in my book, we don't have time to get into it, but I
No,
explain, like, what is the deep state? How's the world? I have
right.
a
Oh,
chapter on that. I have a chapter on that.
oh,
Um,
excellent.
but it's all like the power has been moving up and up and up and up and up, right? The federal government is constantly taking more powers away from the provincial governments. The provincial governments are constantly taking powers away from the municipal government. And then of course, the individual, we've lost almost all our powers, almost all our rights.
Yes,
We've lost our constitutional rights. We've lost our rights as citizens.
right.
Anyway, so we need to completely invert this. As we rebuild things, new structures, it begins with the sovereign individual,
I agree.
then the family, then the
Yeah.
sovereign community. And I think, I mean, Alberta will definitely separate. Alberta will secede from Canada. I have no doubt about that. I don't know when it will happen, but I have no doubt about it. But I think even before Alberta secedes, that we will have municipalities or communities on some level secede in some way. There's a movement called Free Independent Cities. There's I think it's
Really,
also
that's
called
interesting.
the
Yeah.
Ubuntu movement. You may
Alberta
have heard.
is the most awake province in Canada.
Yeah, but we're still governed by tyrants.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so and like and anyway, I know, I mean, I have friends who are working to change the people in politics, but like I said, like, it doesn't matter. You can change. It's not a matter of changing the bad guys at the top, no, because you just get more people who are caught in the same trap.
Ideology, the same ideology,
Well, the same ideology, the same
Yeah.
structure of power. Do this,
Yes,
or
right.
they cut off the money, they cut off the whatever. The ideology has to change in everyone's mind, and we must build new structures starting at the ground up. Sovereign individuals, sovereign communities, and I think that will be the first. It will be various communities, and they might not even be existing municipalities, but a community. You said, like, you were kind of not agreeing with these people who are escaping into the
Oh, no.
wilds or into
Oh,
rural
no.
areas. But I think like that might well be the first independent communities. You say,
Well,
okay, like,
yeah,
we're not going to be a part of healthcare. We're not going to be a part of education. We're like, these are responsibilities, health,
yeah,
education. These are fundamentally responsibilities for individuals, families, and communities.
absolutely. And I'm all for it. I mean, I'm just wondering about what will happen, honestly. I mean, and for everybody in this next phase. So yeah, and for me, I
Oh,
mean,
it's going to be very confusing, very
intense.
disruptive,
Yes.
intense.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
This
I have friends who are moving to intentional communities. So it's something I'm deciding about, actually. But I do have children as well. So I mean, there's lots of factors what's happening, but I think I listened to someone spiritually talk about what's happening, and said the most important thing in this is the connection to God. And if you have a strong connection to God, you can get through this. And that's the most important. So he said, doesn't matter where you are, really, as long as you have that connection to God, and that faith and trust. I mean, that is sort of your number one thing to get through. And everything else is, have some food, have some water, have some of these other things. But, if it gets so bad, anything could happen. The nuclear warheads that countries have now could decimate the world. You've got the biological weapons that they the labs they discovered in Ukraine. I mean, the ways that they can terminate life are many and great. So then you could be living in fear every second, including other biological weapons, now monkeypox, horsepox, grasshopper pox, whatever. So if you got to let go of all that fear and step into the powerful ways you can rebuild with God. And I do think this, like you moving the triangle, turning it over, just dissolving it from the bottom is just non-participation. And then there's structures, I think, in the future which are connected to God. Once we're spiritually connected to God in all we do, I think the period of great innovation will occur, because we really can't even be trusted with advanced technology as humans when we can't understand the spirit in everything, the non-material, as you say, the whole concept of non-material, which is far more significant in our life than the material. The material is a small aspect of being human. As you say, we're not physical beings, we're spiritual beings. So on that note, I mean, I really enjoyed speaking with you, Donald, and tell everyone how they can reach you again, the name of your book, because it sounds phenomenal. And any final thoughts? Yeah,
it should. So the book should be available for pre-sale, I'm hoping, in a week, maybe 2 weeks. This past week, I've just been going over with the publisher the final proof copies and proofreading them, correcting all the little errors that have snuck in, like goofy things you'd never think of, like a period that was underlined. How did that happen?
Yeah, no, right, exactly. Yes.
So and just this morning I started recording the audiobook version of it. So it will be out very soon. That again, the title is What the Hell is Going On? And the subtitle is The Web of Fraud That is Enslaving Everyone and How We Can Escape to Freedom. And my website is www.cominghomespirit.com.
Beautiful, Donald. We'll
And
have to
there's
keep in touch.
soon,
Yeah, yeah,
soon, I've been so focused on the book, I haven't had time to update my website, but pretty
yeah.
soon I'll update. So there's nothing on the website now about the upcoming book, but soon there will be, and I'll have a
Oh,
page there, direct you to
excellent.
a sales page and stuff like that.
Oh, that's amazing. And do you have any quotes just to end, like, and a spiritual quote or something from the Bible that will hearten people? Because a lot of people listening are really scared. I mean, what would you, and again, they do have faith in God, but yet they are grappling with the human emotion of fear right now.
Right, right,
So,
of course. One of the most commonly repeated phrases throughout the whole Bible is, do not be afraid.
fear not. Yes.
Fear not.
Mhm.
There is nothing to fear. And when we understand, okay, when people, there's so many, Christian people, oh yeah, I believe in God, I believe in God, but I'm scared. How can this be, right? Understand, you are not a human being. You are not your body. You are not even your mind. You are a soul. You're an
Mhm.
eternal soul. That's who you are. You have a body. And
Mhm.
we know that the body is incredibly temporary.
Mhm.
It will wear out one day, and we will take off our body just like we take off an old coat and say, it's been a good coat, but it's time to
Mhm.
move on to something new now. And when it comes time to just take off this mortal coil,
Mhm.
and that which is us will go on, because we are eternal beings of light and love.
Mhm.
We are created in the image and likeness of God, our Father, who is an eternal being of light and love. So are we, an eternal being of light and love. There is no death. If you understand there is no death, what is there to fear?
Mhm. Beautiful.
Fear not, fear nothing. And without fear, then you naturally have courage.
Mhm.
Do what is right as you understand what is right. Follow the truth as you understand what is truth, but keep an open mind, because all of us make mistakes and we might be wrong. I
Right.
might be wrong too. So I keep my
Exactly.
mind open, but
Yes.
follow the truth as you understand the truth, and live not by lies. Stand up when lies are spoken in your presence, whether
Yes.
it's in your family or your
Do
workplace. Say,
that.
no, that's not true. That's a lie.
I do that
There,
all the
there
time.
is there is no
Yeah.
global warming. That's a lie.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with nitrogen. That's a lie.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with carbon. Carbon is life on this planet.
Yes.
Everyone
We
learns,
need it.
everyone
Yeah.
in junior high school, we learn that there's a carbon cycle, and
Mhm.
carbon is life on this planet. And carbon
Absolutely.
dioxide is an essential part of the carbon cycle. And more carbon
Absolutely.
dioxide is unambiguously good for life on this planet. And
Right.
most people don't know, having a little background in soil science and being in the fertilizer industry, there is also a nitrogen cycle.
Yes. And
Just
there's
like there's a
nitrogen
carb.
fixers. There's plants that actually
That's right.
help. Nitrogen's good. Again, it's
Of
all
course, nitrogen.
bullshit. It's all
It's lies.
fraud.
It's lies and fraud. Speak up against it. Live not by lies, but
Yeah, beautiful.
know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Ah, that's a great endpoint. Thank you so much. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Despite everything, I feel so free having stepped into this complete sovereignty, or it's wonderful. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. God bless you.